Okay, before I get into this video, you guys got to check out and pick up at least one of these solar power cells. It's portable, it's durable, and it's reliable. And if you don't have a wall outlet to charge it up, you can always throw it out in the sun and let the sun do the charging for you. It's got two outlets so you can power two devices at once. It keeps it charged for a long time, and it's got a cool flashlight that stays on forever. My link with your discount code is in the description below. Ever heard of a guy named Charles M. Higgins? Higgins was born in 1854 and was 7 years old when the uncivil Civil War began, and he grew up to become a prominent ink manufacturer and creator of Higgins American India Ink. He was the head of the Charles M. Higgins Company, manufacturers of the drawing ink he invented. But most notably, Higgins wrote a book in 1919, just 6 years after the creation of the monstrous Federal Reserve, entitled Horrors of Vaccination Exposed and Illustrated. Now, I'd venture to say that most people have never heard of him or his carefully researched anti-vaccination work. But this guy, as you'll see, had his finger on the pulse of what was going on in the medical practice of his day. And the way he writes, you'd almost swear he had a crystal clear glimpse into our future. This profusely illustrated early treatise on the horrors of compulsory vaccination was first published in 1920, just 9 years before the Federal Reserve initiated the Great Depression. Higgins believed mandatory vaccination to be a legal atrocity and a gross violation of basic American rights. He set out to detail, as the introduction notes, quote, many shocking facts, proofs, and exhibits which I have been collecting for years and which, as now massed in the petition and its illustrated supplement, can, I think, leave no doubt in the mind of any reasonable man or woman that compulsory vaccination should be immediately abolished and that its continuation with these proofs against it would be a most gross medical blunder and malpractice and a grave violation of the basic American principle of inherent individual rights. He began his book with this first sentence of the introduction. This little book on the horrors of compulsory vaccination, its medical barbarism, and its moral and legal atrocity as a gross violation of basic personal and broad American rights, is dedicated and addressed to our esteemed President, Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson, you'll remember, wrote these words in his book, The New Freedom, in 1913, the very year the Federal Reserve took over the nation's money supply. Quote, since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive that they better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. He wrote in the same book, a great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world, no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men. It is to that Woodrow Wilson that Charles M. Higgins wrote, subject, in brief, request to the President as Commander-in-Chief to abolish compulsory vaccination in Army and Navy, to make all vaccination voluntary as it now is in the English Army, and to pardon all men condemned by court-martial for refusing coercive vaccination. Compulsory vaccination is a serious danger to health and life, a grave medical malpractice, and a gross violation of medical ethics and of the American principles of inherent natural rights guaranteed in the Declaration and the Constitution, and should be abolished. Dangers and fatalities of vaccination exposed and illustrated. Petition from Charles M. Higgins to the President of the United States. Mr. President, American history, as you well know, tells us that our first president, the illustrious George Washington, died in 1799 as the result of a medical malpractice common at the time, the barbarous and dangerous practice of indiscriminate bleeding to cure disease. While suffering from an attack of acute sore throat or laryngitis, the patient was so weakened by the great loss of vital fluid and repeated bleeding operations that he was not able to endure this loss and overcome also the effects of the disease. Our great Washington thus gave up his glorious life, glorious in the establishment of American liberty and the principles of inalienable natural rights of the individual as the basis for all government, on the altar of medical barbarism and malpractice. Let us now take this warning from the medical barbarism of the past, even over such a long interval of time, as a fit warning against the medical malpractices and barbarisms of today, which are even more irrational and dangerous to human right and safety, health, and life than the malpractice of the past, which destroyed the life of our first president. Now, the most barbarous and dangerous medical malpractice of today is the gross evil of compulsory vaccination, which is doubtless the greatest violation of common sense, medical propriety, and the unalienable natural rights of the individual guaranteed in our basic American charters that any dogmatic, presumptuous profession or class of men has ever been guilty of. And it is to this serious violation of American principle forced on our soldiers and sailors by medical dogmatism that I now wish to ask your most careful attention as one having the supreme commanding and pardoning power in Army and Navy, with the earnest prayer that in the exercise of that exalted wisdom and power possessed by your great American office and personality, which has now made itself felt around the whole world, that this medical barbarism of compulsory disease may be abolished in our Army and Navy, and that all men condemned by court-martial for refusing the infliction on their bodies of compulsory disease shall be fully pardoned and restored to their proper and honorable status as loyal American soldiers and sailors. And now I wish to present to you in the following pages an abundant array of facts and evidence which prove, I think, beyond doubt, the great evil and danger of vaccination, its fatality and futility, and clearly justify the rational reform suggested for the abolishment of all forced or compulsory vaccination. In this medical malpractice of today, the doctors do not open the veins and drain out the lifeblood of the patient ostensibly to cure his disease as in the mistaken past, but they now keep his blood in the body, inject into it directly or indirectly various more or less virulent diseases, blood poisons, or disease germs, cultures, or products, either living or dead, with the idea of curing or preventing some natural disease. These practices are called respectively vaccination and serum treatment. In vaccination, an actual living or dead disease germ or virus is injected into the body, lymph, skin, or muscle, whereas in serum or antitoxin treatment, a disease product or culture is so injected. Now, whatever merits or demerits this system of disease inoculation may have, either in preventing or curing or immunizing against natural disease, I will not here say and do not need to here discuss, except to state that such curative or preventative power has been much exaggerated and is very limited and uncertain. But whatever these merits or demerits may be, it is obvious on fundamental principles of medical and civic ethics that such a dangerous and repugnant practice of disease inoculation and blood poisoning should not be made compulsory on any person for any excuse whatever. It must be here remembered that it was admitted that the old smallpox inoculation had a certain preventative power, and yet it was finally condemned and abandoned for reasons of its great danger as causing more disease and death than it prevented. Disregarding, therefore, the question of preventative merits or demerits, I think I can now say with perfect truth and soberness and without fear of refutation that this modern system of compulsory vaccination is the most violent and dangerous and most immoral or unethical system of medication that has ever been devised by a most honorable yet most presumptuous profession, which has been proved guilty of the most gigantic medical mistakes in its past history of the centuries, one of which, indiscriminate bleeding, as we have already seen, killed our first president and many other victims of that period. To this gigantic and abandoned mistake, we might now add the two horrible practices of smallpox inoculation and arm-to-arm vaccination, both of which were once used and approved by the highest medical authorities as safe and infallible preventatives of natural disease, yet both were finally abandoned as great medical mistakes and were prohibited by penal law as most risky methods of propagating and extending disease and more dangerous to human health and life than the natural disease itself. Guys, the rest of Higgins' book is absolutely fascinating and stunning as we consider our current predicament forming on the horizon of mandatory Bill Gates-funded vaccinations. If you want to read the rest of this book, I'm going to make it available for free to everybody who's subscribed to my email list. If you want a free copy of the book, Horrors of Vaccination Exposed and Illustrated, all you got to do is go to highimpactflix.com and sign up to my free newsletter. Everybody who's a part of the list by midnight on May 23rd, that's tomorrow night, will get a free copy. Leave your thoughts about what Higgins said in his introduction in the comments section below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know, and don't forget to subscribe to my private email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. If you want to support more content on this channel, grab one of these hard-hitting, conversation-starting shirts from the shirt store. I'll see you guys in the next heavily censored shadow ban video.
Deaf and dumb thespians take the silent stages. With their cobweb throats, they can't sing any notes, so the audience begins dispersing. The actors get pissed, they start cursing. They're tired of rehearsing. They're ready to do the damn show. They're ready to go. You know what I mean? Fuck the quarantine, fuck COVID-19, fuck a fucking vaccine. Social engineering at the center stage. About to go full circle when we turn the page. Miss Deborah Burks, you old bitch, putting COVIDs on obits and certificates, it's ridiculous. We should be enraged and irate at our newfound fate and change the current state of mind controls as Mr. Gates pulls the